Hi there, welcome to Boxing Deep Dive. I'm Lyndon Hosking, that's Peter Maniata, so that's Tassie Brown's phone you're seeing there. How are we, boys? Welcome to Dream Fights.
No, good to be on
Thanks,
again, Lyndon.
boys.
I should have warned you I was going straight to all three of us, boys, but this is an interesting one, Pete. This one's on you, and I must admit, when you brought it up, I sort of went back in my chair a little bit because I didn't think we'd be talking about this type of fight so soon. So, who have you got?
We've got none other than Barry Michael, the former junior lightweight IBF world champion, up against now the current king lightweight, George Kambosos Jr. And look, I'd say George Kambosos Jr. right now up against 1985-86 Barry Michael defeated Lester Ellis. We'd say about that time, should we? And this
Yeah,
would be obviously over 12 rounds.
yeah, I think so. 12 rounds, and I was just going to say, Tassie, I mean, 2 weeks ago, there's no way we would have probably been talking about George Kambosos in this type of fight, but he's made the big time, and he's on Dream Fights on Boxing Deep Dive.
Yeah, mate, I think it's one of the biggest accomplishments he's done so far, mate. But, look, he's had a big fortnight or big week, because it's very smart by his management to keep him in America, to go to the NBA basketball in Miami, to be seen, to go to the Devin Haney fight, to go to the Tank Davis fight, to get known by the American media. It doesn't matter about Australia one bit. He's made in America now, so Australia doesn't mean shit. He's made in America, where all the top journos know him big time now. Canelo and Roberto Duran FaceTimed him. So it doesn't matter about Australia now. Australia obviously know him, and he'll still get a lot of. But America's where boxing is at, and that's where it matters. And he's stayed over there. So smart by his management to not fly straight home to Australia. He's
Yeah.
over there now, and I tell you now, Haney and Tank Davis' performance on the weekend, he's up there with them all, mate. He can actually beat all these guys.
Yeah, no, I agree. And
So everything's changed, mate.
he's the
It's hard to
man.
explain. He's on your lips now. He's on everyone's, like, he's actually, talking about making it. He's actually, he's done awesome.
No, he has. And Pete, as I said, who would have thought 2 weeks ago we'd be talking about George Kambosos in a dream fight with Barry Michael? But what made you, apart from the obvious of two great fighters, what made you think this was such a great fight to put together?
Probably the chemistry. You've got both Aussie guys, so we want to get the Aussie flavour going. And Cambosis, more of a ethnic Aussie, where Barry's from England, so he's got that hard-nosed English Aussie kind of thing. Just can you imagine those two at a pub, walk outside, there'd be probably blood everywhere type of thing. And they're both fiery. Barry was very fiery when he was younger as well. And would have been a real interesting matchup as far as chemistry goes, with press conferences, stare downs, just the whole chemistry of the whole thing. I would have loved to have seen the pre-fight kind of build up as just as much as the fight.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree, mate. I must admit, I never ever entered my mind about this fight, but when you said it, I thought, wow, that would be an amazing fight. And I must say, before we get into it, obviously best wishes to Barry. He got out of hospital this week after major heart surgery, so all our best wishes to Barry Michael. He's a great guy, and I'm sure he'll be watching this episode. So before we get into the statistics of both guys, let's go to last week's result, which was Pernell Whitaker and Terence Crawford. And a little bit of a surprise here. Not much love for Bud. Tassie, 90% for Whitaker and only 10% for Crawford. Does that surprise you?
It surprised me with the people like that would be probably voting, because I thought they'd probably go with a more current day fighter. But credit to them, because they're on the money with Whitaker. But look, I'm a bit surprised actually. I thought they would have went with the current day fighter.
Well, it goes to show there's people out there that study yesteryear as well. But look, I think we all went for Pernell ourselves, but I was a little bit surprised that 9 out of 10 people went for Whitaker. So let's just get on to tonight's dream fight. As we said, it's George Kambosos Jr. I didn't put that on the the intro there against Barry Michael. Let's first go to George Kambosos' record. You can see there 20-0 with 10 knockouts. A couple of his other achievements apart from last week was the Australian lightweight champion 2014, the WBA Oceania lightweight champion in 16, IBF Pan Pacific champion in 17, and of course a couple of weeks ago, week ago, WBA lightweight champion, WBO lightweight champion, IBF lightweight champion, and I've just highlighted the WBC lightweight champion because there's a little bit of conjecture about who's got that or he hasn't got it. I just think he's the man. He's a top dog. Tassie, he's got all those titles, so let's just call it what it is, and he's undisputed champion.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Lomachenko was the man. Lopez beat Loma. George has beat Lopez. So, yeah, he's the man, mate. As we said, we all talk about the belts and the supers and the franchise and the golds and the whatever else. But, I mean, with George, I know George is an amateur, a very good amateur, trainer under the great Igor, Tim Zoo's uncle, training for all his fights. 11 pro fights and amateur fights under Igor, which people should remember. Mm-hmm. His standout win, his first big win in Australia was against Brandon Ogilvie, which I thought at the time was a tough fight because Brandon was a very, very slick boxer, both good amateur backgrounds. I think they might have fought in the amateurs actually, the same era. I know Luke Jackson beat them all in the amateurs. Yep. But I mean, George had about half a dozen fights with Val Borg as well. I think they split a few decisions there. So his big step up was Brandon Ogilvie. He come through with flying colours. Then his next step up was Camille Bella in New Zealand. He really stepped up there as well. And then, he started setting his training camps up in America, which was a great idea. Sparring Manny Pacquiao in the Philippines and America and just going to all the gyms around America and sparring the best. And I think that's the reason he's got so much success now because he went over and done it the hard way, but the right way, and took no backward step. Didn't take any soft fights, as we know. He beat Mickey Bay. Probably not the biggest win. He's got a great name, but he had been inactive and didn't do nothing after that, Mickey Bay. I'm very big on guys when they beat someone, that guy still goes on and wins a championship afterwards if they lose. But he beat Mickey Bay. The big win was Lee Stelby, very good boxer, very sleek in the guy's backyard. And then he does the unthinkable and well, set for Pete. Pete backed in, but he dethrones Lopez. So, what can you say?
Yeah, no, exactly. And Pete, he's done it the hard way. I mean, Tassie mentioned that, and I agree that, the Mickey Bays, and I mean, Lee Selby was a former world champion, I think, so they were good fighters, but I think it was a classic case of George just doing what he had to do, He just fought where he had to against whoever it was and just scraped together those wins to get in a position to fight for the world title, and obviously history shows that he took his chance.
Yeah, look, the fights with Selby and Mickey Bay, George kind of went in with a 50-50 chance at least. People thought it's going to be interesting to see how he goes. But I think George enjoyed being the underdog up against Lopez. It really brought a lot out of him. And he knew that he'd have to bring things out of him to see where he was at mentally, physically and spiritually. Because, look, it's easy talking the talk. And we've seen many Australia talk the talk. And we go over and we fight a top dog and it's over in 5 or 6 rounds. Or it wasn't even a fight and we kind of get disappointed. But he actually went over there, got up off the canvas and went through probably demons in his own mind in Lopez's backyard. Yep. He did it in his backyard. I mean, Lopez lives 10 kilometres from the venue. He would have woken up, had bacon and eggs where he's had bacon and eggs all his life or whatever, a pasta where he normally has it in his own, woken up in his own bed, done his own routine with his own fans, where Kambosos has travelled all the way across from another country.
Not to mention 5,000 people in attendance are all against him.
Yeah, and everything obviously being another country's foreign, so it doesn't matter how much sparring you do. He didn't have the people in his corner that we would. I mean, but now he's got the privilege of fighting in Sydney and having, or Melbourne, or whichever venue they choose to pick. and he's got Matchroom, the biggest promotional company, arguably along with Top Rank in the world, chasing his services. And at his beck and call, he's no longer the guy that has to dig deep just to get a little bit of nugget. This guy now has got everything he needs, and they're coming for him. And I think that mentality in any dogfight will see him with a 50-50 chance. It doesn't matter who you put him in with. He's got that dogfight type of attitude, and he'll get up off the canvas and he'll fight hard. There's no dog in him. So I think the tougher and bigger the challenge, I think the more he smiles. Because I remember one time we were chatting, and we were walking back actually. It was in Brisbane, and he was talking about a few things about Horn, and all right, yeah, he said, I'll fight Horn. And then he brought up the Spartans, and he said, the Spartans don't say how many. He says, where are they? I want to attack them. He said, that's how I am. If there's a fight, I don't care who it is, I'm going to attack. So that's his mentality. He wants a challenge. He doesn't care if he gets hurt. He'll go out on his shield. Yeah. And we saw that last week. And that's why the whole world's fallen in love with him. Canelo Alvarez, Duran, all these legends, they don't do FaceTime with anyone. You try and call them. Try and get their number and say, let's do FaceTime. you got better chance of winning Tats Lotto. How's that?
They obviously haven't met Tazzy Brown yet, because he can get anyone on FaceTime. So,
all right, Tazzy, this time next week, Lyndon and I will stock up and get you the biggest Christmas present of all time if you can get Canelo on FaceTime. How's that for a challenge?
Well, he's met him before. I think you guys both met him, but I'm sure he could get it done. But Tazzy, before we get on to his opponent, of course, you're right what you said before. Like you check all the social media sites, all the YouTube sites at the moment, and it's all George Kambosos. It's interviews with reactions to his win, who he's going to fight next. And seeing him over there, he does not seem out of place at all, does he?
Mate, he's cool as a cucumber. He's born to do this. He
loves it.
Like normal, mate. Teddy Atlas interview. Teddy Atlas can be a bit full on, but he loved him. So, look, as I said, he could have flown back to Australia the next day, and we wouldn't have said nothing because because he's been away for so long. Smart marketing by his team to keep him there. Because as I said, it doesn't matter about Australia. We love Australia and we boxing and all that shit. America is where it's at. Now, Robbie Peterson doesn't get recognised at Woolworths or Coles in Melbourne. But in America, he would. Jeff Fennick, everywhere he goes, Mexican legends, way more respect in America. That's where it's at, mate. That's where boxing is, Lyndon. That's why you fly over there all the time.
Yeah.
There's great marketing to stay on for the Lopez, for the Haney, for the Tank, to do interviews, to go to the NBA Miami Heat basketball, mate. If he does fight a fight here, that's great, because his next fight in America is going to be huge. Like, you know, it's really, really, the world's his oyster.
No, it is. And, as I said, he's on everyone's lips over there.
He deserves it.
Yeah, and you're right. And exactly right with his management, because whoever's, we know who's in charge over there, but a great decision to stay over there. I know he would have loved to have got on the plane and got home, but to do all those interviews at ringside and on social media, it's just been a masterstroke from his management team. So, and I've got no doubt it'll probably add a zero to his next paycheck. But it's not the George Kambosos show.
No Australian does that. No,
what's that, Tazzy?
No Australian does that.
No.
Every Australian flies straight home.
Yep.
No Australian stays back for an extra week or two.
Yep. Well, as I said, it's not just the George Kambosos show. He's got an opponent here, and it's an opponent we all love, and that is Barry Boy Michael. I'm glad he'll love that, or hope he likes that shot.
You know, he doesn't like the boy anymore.
What's that, Pete?
He doesn't like the boy moniker anymore.
Oh, sorry.
Barry
Michael. He's over 60 now, so it probably doesn't fit him anymore. But 48-9, 3 draws, 15 KOs. You can see there the Australian Super Featherweight Champion in 76, Commonwealth Super Featherweight Champion also in 76, Australian Lightweight Champion and Commonwealth Champion 78 and 81. And then, of course, the big one, the IBF Junior Lightweight title in 1985, which he took from Lester Ellis. And probably for some of the international people that are watching this are probably saying who is Barry Michael. But Pete, back in the day, I mean, this is the guy that, probably a little bit like George Kambosos, earned his title the hard way. He travelled all over the world. He went to Philippines, Indonesia, England, America, South Africa. He fought everywhere to get that shot, and when he got it, he took his chance.
Yeah, based in Hawaii as well. He was trained in Hawaii with Dana Goodson and Jeff Malcolm, and I think they lived together for over a year. So Barry was also, very intelligent too. He knew how to sell a fight. He was very smart. He actually promoted himself a few times as well, and fought at the Port Melbourne football ground. He'd done everything he had to do back then just to get to where he needed to get to. And one of the best body punchers in Australian boxing history, Barry. Good pressure fighter, in close, very smart. I mean, didn't have massive KO power, but he had real
only 15
strong
KOs
body
out of
punches.
48 wins.
And he'd wear you down. It was more like in your face, bang, bang to the body. Eventually, he slows you down and wears you down. And he could fight 15 hard rounds as well, and tough as nails. Can hit him with a baseball bat, he wouldn't blink. He was just one of those in-your-face pressure fighters, perfectly positioned. Used to use the head of it as well. Barry would do anything to win. And he just had that tough Western suburbs mentality, and he had skill. I mean, you can't take it away from him. He had beautiful, footwork, jab, used to pivot well to the, body, and he was, his defence was pretty good as well. He wasn't that hard, he wasn't any type of weaknesses there. He's with Tony Barber, the quiz show host. So, it could do. It could do. I mean, beating Leicester at the time when Leicester was the main man, that was a massive win. And Barry on his day could beat anyone because he had that inner confidence, and he could always work your game plan. He had a good boxing IQ, and would wear them down and punch them to the body and wear them out and do what they didn't want them to do. So he was always, I remember when he fought Graham Porky Brooks. I mean that was basically, Porky just wasn't ready for that type of fighter. And Barry was that fighter. He'd give you a nightmare. He was just one of those guys.
Yeah, Tassie, it's a pretty tough one because before we do our predictions, the hardest thing for me is we all know what Barry brings to the table, but I think the way I look at it is what George brings to the table, whether he falls into the trap of what Lester did. Lester had the speed, the power, everything, but he fell into the trap. Do you think a lot of it, the result comes down to whether George falls in that trap or fights his own fight?
Yeah, well, let me just mention about Barry Michaels first. He's a very good friend of mine, Barry, and actually I mentioned him today, and he sent me through some photos of his operation, and I just said, mate, you're a bloody tough as nails champion, get well, get better soon. And he said, thanks, Tassie. Got a lot of time for Barry, mate, as a person, firstly.
Yep.
As a fighter, mate, what a legend. I mean, as you know, I grew up as a historian watching the fights of my dad. I mean, his wins over Al Carter, big punching American, he knocked everyone out almost. Only other one, Porky Brooks, who was a great fighter, could have been anything. Frank Ropus in a war. So many other, good imports who won the Commonwealth title. But then to beat the legendary Lester Ellis, who we rate very highly, fast, powerful, body puncher, young, so much there. He just got the job done, mate. He was just a 15-round fighter, body puncher, good defence, he'd make you miss by that much. He'd done everything well. And, mate, he just used to break you down. And was that tough, mate? He was tough as teak. He was just unbelievable, mate. And he even fought the great Rocky Lotrix later on. He knocked out Mark Fernandez.
Yeah.
Barry Michaels is an all-time great. Now, you let me know when we want to talk our selections. But
yeah, go ahead, mate. While you're at it, let's hear who you think wins and why.
Well, I mean, look, it's hard because George is still in his career. He hasn't finished yet, so we don't know how good he's going to do. If George goes on and beats Tank Davis, Haney, goes up to the next weight division and fucking cleans out super lightweight, we might be having a different conversation. But so far he's beat one guy, really. Well, two guys, Lopez and Selby, that really I push apart. The Mickey Bay fight, great fight, but Mickey Bay, he's not really, bit of activity and didn't really do much as a champion. Didn't even know if he made a defence or not. Lost on the scales, I think. So, mate, and then we go Lopez. Lopez, legend. Yeah, the win over Loma, and was Loma really a lightweight? Did we start picking at things? We're not picking out the win. The win's great. But at the moment, that's all he's done. Barry beat Lester Ellis. Are we trying to say George better than Lester Ellis now, are we? Are we trying to say that? So, at the moment, I think Barry beats him on points, spoils him. As you know, wins over Graham Brook, Lester Ellis, and Carter from America, and Fernandez. To me, at the moment, that's already there, established. George has one win over Lopez and a nice mover, but light punching Selby, who was up in division from featherweight. I think Barry mugs him, does everything he does, and wins a decision. I'm not saying it's a wide decision, but I think all we can go by is history. George, at the moment, is in his peak. Well, he probably hasn't hit his peak yet. All I can go by is that I think Barry wins.
Okay, so decision there for, and we've just lost Tassie. I'm sure he'll be back in a sec. So that was for Barry. All right, Pete, who do you think wins and why?
How did Tassie give us on points?
He said Barry Michael on points, mate.
Okay, yeah, this is an interesting fight when you break it down because, I mean, KAMBOSOS, Mickey Bay, former IBF world champion, so there's one tick. Selby was a featherweight world champion, 2 ticks. And Lopez, obviously undisputed lightweight champion, 3 ticks. So he hasn't lost a fight yet. So it's hard to actually tip against a guy that hasn't lost a fight because, to be quite honest, I don't know KAMBOSOS' ceiling. We might be here in 12 months' time saying he's the greatest fighter Australia's ever produced.
Yep.
If he starts cleaning everyone up and then moves up and cleans people up, I mean, this guy's got the platform now to because he's definitely going to have a high ceiling. I mean, we saw him the other week, and for me, I saw Altirio Gatti with better boxing skills. That's what I saw, a better model of Altirio Gatti. So Barry was a nightmare. He was a hurricane. He'd just get you out of there. He's a murderous body puncher. He always, will have gloves, will travel, done everything he had to do. But Barry had 8 or 9 losses as well. Yeah. So the formula was there to beat Barry, and it was clearly proven. Rocky Lockridge at the time, it wasn't the Barry Michael that we know, but Rocky Lockridge kind of put a number on him, and Rocky Lockridge wasn't a premier. He was a good world champion, but Rocky lost the title straight after that as well. He wasn't a guy that went on to dominate or be anything. He was sort of coming on the end. But look, it's a hard fight to pick, and that's why I picked it, because I think Barry deserves the respect of being one of Australia's greatest ever fighters. And I think that he's got the respect of everyone as a warrior. And I mean, it's hard to tip against Barry, but then again, how do you tip against George, who hasn't lost a fight?
That's right.
He hasn't lost a fight, and he's been he's been to England, he's been to America, he's been to people's backyards, he's been to New Zealand, and whatever. He's fought overseas, so he hasn't lost a fight. So I'm going to have to go with George KAMBOSOS on the fact that there's no blueprint for him yet. It's like when Floyd said, "There's no blueprint for me because I haven't lost." So you don't know how I'm going to lose because I haven't and I won't. So we don't know if George won't. I mean, George, we don't know. I mean, he could lose his next fight. I'm not saying he's going to go through on a winning spree, but right at the moment, he's made every post a winner and he hasn't lost a fight. So that's why I'm tipping George KAMBOSOS in an absolute bloody war where they both need to go to hospital over 12 rounds. But KAMBOSOS for mine, only because he hasn't lost yet. He's proven himself under the heat. Whatever you throw at him, he seems to find. And Mickey Bay's a former world champion, and Lee Selby's a former world champion. And, Lopez was top 6 pound for pound in the world. He was considered the next star of boxing. So beat him in his own backyard. I mean, an undefeated Kambosos at the moment. We don't know how high the ceiling is up against an absolute warrior and legend in Barry Michael. I'm tipping Kambosos only on the fact that he's never lost.
I'm with you, Barry. I'm with you, Barry boy, all the way, Barry Michaels.
Well, I think, Pete, look, I agree with both of you. Look, it's a really, really tough fight to pick. What's especially hard about it is that, like you said, Pete, we haven't got a full portfolio of George Kambosos to really go by. Look, he had an unbelievable win over Lopez. It'll go down in boxing history. But on the other hand, we look back 4 years when Jeff Horn beat Manny Pacquiao. After that, didn't go to where he thought or where we thought he might go to. So I think we've got to be a little bit careful of just automatically throwing out that he's the greatest of all time. I 100% disagree with that. I think you've got to earn that. That's another story. But if you're talking about the George Kambosos right now, as I said, I think my result really comes down a lot to which fight George Kambosos fights. If he falls into Lester's trap of trying to take Barry out, he doesn't punch anywhere near as hard as what Lester Ellis did. So I think that would be a recipe for disaster. But I think George is a little bit smart, maybe a little bit smarter IQ-wise than maybe Lester was, and not as emotionally involved and sticks to his plan. And I think if he fights the way he did against Lopez, where he gives him angles, he waits to time those punches coming in, he does the side steps that he does so well, I think he has enough to keep Barry off for 12 rounds. 15 rounds might be a bit different. But if we're talking about a 12-round fight, I think, like you, Pete, I think it will be an absolute war. But I'm tipping George Kambosos in a split decision over 12 rounds. And I can't wait to...
I'm going split decision as well.
It's a really, really tough one. And look, as I said before, a lot of
decision.
international...
I'm saying both of them will end up in hospital with 40 stitches
look,
or something. It's going to be a bloodbath.
Yeah, it's got the Lester Ellis type of fight written all over it, I think. Because George Kambosos, even though he fights smart...
So it'll be the same result.
Yeah.
Same result as the Lester Ellis one too.
Yeah, and mate, I would not disagree. I think it could. But I just think, as I said, that George is maybe not as emotionally invested as what Lester was and wouldn't want to just take Barry's head off like Lester did. And I think he would box a little bit smarter. And don't worry, Barry would be in his face. He'd be trying all the tricks in the world. George would go out the ring all busted up and sore, I can tell you. His ribs would be hurt and he'd probably have cuts. But I just think he'd have enough to hold Barry off for 12 rounds. And for the international viewers that watch these fights, you probably think, how did you possibly think Barry Michael would give George a close fight based on last week's result? But obviously Australian boxing fans know Barry well enough to know he mightn't be well known as some of our other fighters out there, but in Australia, he's one of the toughest and the hardest and most durable fighters we've ever produced. So
and respected.
And that's why it's so hard to go against Barry, because I respect him so much. And Barry, if you're watching, I'm sorry, but
you're going against him, Lyndon.
I know, but we can't.
You're going against him. Mate.
I know we can't let our emotions get over us. So.
Lyndon. Let's call Jimmy up and organise that interview with.
Well, we want to get George on.
Yeah. Jimmy, are you watching this?
You're off the Christmas card list, Lyndon.
Yeah, I know.
You're off the Christmas card list now.
And he did send me a message yesterday, thanking me for sending him a get well message. So, look, we'll get Barry on when he's well enough to come on, because I'd love to actually hear his thoughts about these types of fights, because we've obviously had him on with Lester and now the dream fight with George. But look, either way,
as we said, mate, if George comes out and beats Tank and beats Haney and cleans out all these other good stars, which is a good division at the moment, I might be a bit different. But look, I can see the argument both ways. One's been proven, one's still to write his own chapter. So far, it looks pretty bloody good from what George has done. But good, definitely a good one, Pete. Good conversation, mate.
Well, the fact that it's so hard for us to pick makes a really good decision on your behalf, mate. Because as I said, I wouldn't have thought of this fight in a million years, to be honest. But you've brought it up, and it's given us all something to think. Probably more so Australian boxing fans, of course. But do some research if you don't know who Barry is, because he was a great fighter. Record
If you don't
might
know who
reflect
Barry is, you don't know all shit about Bucks.
Well, if you look at his records, like, he's 48, 9 and 3, but this is a guy that fought a bit like Kambosos, fought other guys in the backyards. He copped a few questionable decisions as well along the way.
Yeah.
And back in the day where it wasn't all about the zero.
I'm going to tell you, mate, Big Barry Michaels fan in Tasmania, Big Billy Hack. I mentioned him before. He's a big supporter of Boxing Deep Dive.
Even size-wise, Barry was 5'6", Kambosos 5'9".
Yeah.
I mean, Kambosos is a big, strong lightweight. He's going to do. I mean, I'm predicting this, guys. Kambosos could run right through the whole lightweight division. Tank Davis 5'5", Haney. I saw both of them fight on week. I reckon Kambosos beats both of them, especially if it's in Australia. I reckon he'll be too strong. You wear him down. Once the speed factor wears down, I reckon he'll start teeing off on him. I think he just rips into him, especially if it's in Australia.
Yeah.
I think the conditions here, if we can get an outdoor venue like Jeff Horn and Pacquiao, and it's nice and chilly out there, and there's that, that conditions that we love, I could see him going nuts.
Do it at they should do it at Marvel Stadium. If it's a nice day, have the roof open, so it's like an outdoor stadium. They've got the ability to put it in, and they've got the ability to have 60 or 70,000 people if it warrants it, because obviously the stadium itself holds 50 plus the ground, so they could have 70,000 there, which would be unbelievable. So so Tassie, that means we're up to you, mate. We've gone the full circle. Dream fight. Who have you got for us next week?
So there's a guy that's obviously, I think he's been in the dream fight once or twice, to a guy that hasn't been in one dream fight, and to me, doesn't get talked about enough. I know Pete loves him. I loved him. I think he's definitely one of the greatest of all time. And at his time, no one was better than him. Like, he done it so easy. I want Roy Jones Jr. versus Marvellous Marvin Hagler.
Ooh, at middleweight.
Oh.
Well, Roy Jones won his first belt at middleweight.
He did, yeah, against Hopkins,
yeah. Bernard Hopkins.
Yeah.
With a vacant IBF title.
Roy Jones, I mean, he's one of the nicest, humblest guys you'd ever want to meet.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
And he's obviously a magician in the ring too, wasn't he? He's just amazing.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't get talked about enough. I think if he didn't have the last few fights of his career like he did, we're not talking Floyd. We're not talking, we still talk Pac, obviously, I know, but I'm talking up there with Ray Leonard and Ray Robertson. Roy Jones, when you're pound for pound, he done it easier than anyone. Like, it wasn't a question even of how it was going to be. It was a foregone conclusion. And we might say, did he have the great guys in his era? But Hopkins and Tunney and all them guys are great, but he made everyone look mediocre. They might have been awesome, but he made them look second rate.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes a special fighter to make other really great fighters look ordinary. And even when you remember
we know Hagler, we know Hagler, champion for 8 or 10 years. So let's do it next week.
Love that fight. That will be a ripper. Hopefully Mike's back for it. That will be an absolute ripper. We obviously had Hagler. I think Hagler fought Alvarez, Canelo Alvarez in the other dream fight, but we haven't had Roy yet, which is surprising considering what a great fighter that he was.
What a great career. Went up and won.
Yeah. Go ahead, Pete. Sorry.
Pete. Go, Pete.
No, he went up and won a heavyweight world title as well.
Heavyweight. From middleweight to heavyweight. Just amazing. So, no, that's
Mate,
that's great.
He made two guys. He made two Hall of Famers look average. Bernard Hopkins and James Toney.
Yep.
He made them look pretty simple. And they're two fucking greats. So, it's just a freak.
Yep, no, he certainly was. No, that's awesome. Well, as I said, hopefully Mike's back for that one because that will be a ripper. That's Roy Jones Jr. against Marvellous Marvin Hagler. So make sure you tune in for that one. Thanks for watching. George Kambosos, 2 out of 3 by decision over Barry Michael. And we'll be back next week to discuss another one. Thanks for joining in. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Lyndon.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.